Okay, and with that, we are live for episode 147 of Trek
Yep.
Live. How you doing this morning, Dan?
Doing great. Extremely excited because we're talking about ships today.
Yeah,
So should be a good time.
yeah, definitely one of our favorite kind of topics that we don't do a ton of. And we've talked about ships before. I mean, I was on Trek
We have.
Ranks at one point
Yeah.
about ships, but it was quite a while ago. We have some new ships kind of in the picture to think about since a lot of those other conversations we've had in the past. Um, And it's one of those things that is constantly changing, I'm sure, for you as it is for me. So can't hurt to double back to it and um, look at it again. So today we're going to be guessing each other's 5 favorite hero ships. So the way I would define hero ships would be that it's the ship that the heroes are on in that given show, movie, whatever whatever. Um, but we play fast and loose with the rules here. If you can,
Yeah, they're meant to be broken.
they're meant to be broken. If you can twist something out of that that's a little unconventional, no harm, no foul. But we'll see
Yeah.
how it goes. And then this is going to be the beginning of a mini series, right? We're going to do this, guess each other's ship related topic for a few weeks in a row here, right?
Yeah. November is like ships month here
Yeah.
at Trek Live.
Yep.
How I would define ships is technically a vessel.
Mm-hmm.
Let's give an example. Deep Space Nine, for me at least, well, that is a technically like a space-faring vessel, technically, and it can move. I would consider it a ship, but it would that's kind of a gray area. And
It
maybe we'll
is.
talk about that a little bit later, but I would not consider that a ship. No.
Yeah, I have a hard time reasoning that as a ship myself.
Yeah,
It's kind of
I mean,
a
technically, it's a hero in the sense that
yeah,
our heroes are on it, but it's not the typical vessel in the
Right.
sense of the word, at least to me.
yeah.
Yeah,
If somebody picked it, I would say okay. You can, like you said, rules are meant to be broken, and we're not like hard and fast. You must fit in this box, kind of
Exactly.
situation. But for me, I tend to think of another thing as a Deep Space Nine hero ship. But
Yeah.
we'll see how that goes. So next week we're going to talk about, just kind of lead this off and kind of talk about how we're going to do this. Guess each other's ship month, basically.
Yeah.
We're gonna do non-hero, like recurring ships next week. So
Yes.
ships that you see multiple times. You know, that's where you're going to find, like, for example, just throwing a random thing out there, like the Borg cube. If you really love the Borg cube, that's where that ship would fit, because it's something that is recurring. And then in 2 weeks, we're going to do a one-off, like ships that you only see maybe once, or in like a single story, not over a longer period of time that you see over multiple episodes. So covering the whole wide gamut, I think you could do like guess each other's 5 favorite ships, and it could range from all over the spectrum. You could pick something as obscure as, Okana's freighter from the Outrageous Okana. Just throw something completely ridiculous out there,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
throw it on your list along with right next to, for example, like the Discovery, for example. So this will allow us to kind of like touch all the bases, cover all kinds of ships, and feel like we're kind of compartmentalizing our favorites in ways that we can highlight all kinds of things. So it's going to be ships month, pretty much, like you said, over the next few
Yeah.
weeks. I'm really looking forward to that, and first time we've ever done this, like hit a few, basically done the same sort of thing multiple weeks in a row, and I think
Yeah.
this is a good way to do it. So looking forward to that.
Yeah, the 3 tiers really helped us kind of get a wide range, because I think when we were kind of building this kind of topic, we wanted to try to get as much as possible, but I think this allows us to really cover the range of ships, so it should be fun.
Yeah. AKA Mamel's in the room, says good morning. Good morning. Says this was a hard topic. Forced her to think, and she chose 5 Federation ships for her list. I'm looking forward to hearing hers as we go. We'll certainly share along the way. And if anybody else pops into the room and wants to participate, share your own top 5 list of hero ships, however you choose to define that. We will read your choices on air as well. But before we do this, before we get into the topic at hand, as we are one to do, where are you on your rewatch? Anything new?
I have watched a single episode. I know I've been bad. It was Paradise.
Okay.
Kind of just a more or less run of the mill kind of Star Trek episode to me. Nothing very special about it that I'd like to report, but hoping to get back on the wagon and keep moving through Deep Space Nine. That's for sure.
Cool. I kind of like Paradise. I think it feels more like a TNG episode than a DS9 episode to me. Just the way the story is told. I think it's one of those early DS9 episodes that you kind of port the story into really any Star Trek series. It would work in that basic story could work in Enterprise or in Voyager.
Yeah.
You could do it anywhere. It's not completely specific to Deep Space Nine, but I think Sisko's kind of heroic in it, and
I mean, I like the the not throwing away your ideals just because there's some sort of adversity. I like that.
Sure.
So, yeah, there's good things in it.
Yeah,
for sure.
The female head of that colony,
the cult leader.
The cult leader is really she's a tough cookie. I mean, she's one of those characters. She reminds me of like Nurse Ratched in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Like really, just almost like nails on a chalkboard, like levels of kind of arrogance and yet power. Like she's got Sisko by the you know what for most of the episode. But yeah, I think it's pretty good. I like it. I wouldn't say it's classic, but it's an episode that I'm fairly fond of. For me, I finished TNG season 4 last night. So I wrapped that up. Since we did this last, I watched everything ranging from Cupid to Redemption Part 1. Highlights in that run for me would be the Drumhead, which is an all-timer for my money.
Good. So
yeah, great courtroom drama. Yeah, great Picard stuff in it. His dialogue about, not every villain twirls a mustache. Like there are always people who think they're doing the right thing and are righteous and don't view themselves as a villain, but are need to be checked. And Admiral Satie is certainly that, and he warns Worf about history is full of characters like that, and more will come. Like that's just the nature. It's not usually somebody who just walks into a room and says, "I'm bad and I'm here to wreck shit." Like it's not usually how it goes. Really good dialogue, great courtroom drama stuff. Like I love the direction. Jonathan Frakes directed that episode. Really cool camera movement in the courtroom scenes. Really immersive. Gene Simmons is a great guest star as Admiral Satie. Really powerful. Goes toe to toe. Brings Picard to his knees. Really upper echelon Star Trek episode for me. I really like The Mind's Eye, which is like Star Trek's take on the Manchurian Candidate. Classic movie. Good Geordi episode. Romulan subterfuge, trying to start a civil war with the Klingons, which kind of like leads into Redemption. It's like the pre-steps into what ends up happening in Redemption. And then Redemption's great. It's a big, huge, ambitious story about a Klingon civil war breaking out and paying off things that go back to Sins of the Father and Reunion. There's some early TNG style serialization with the Klingon storyline there. And the Romulan storyline. Part 2, we get Sela, which is a callback to yesterday's Enterprise, which is really bizarre. They find a way to work that in and keep that in the continuity and not just a reset button episode that has no consequence outside of the hour you're watching it. So this is TNG kind of humming and firing on all cylinders at this point. Not a bad episode in the run for me in this weekend of watching TNG. Strong ending to the season.
That's for sure.
Yeah. So season 5 next week, I'm looking to start, and I'm in striking distance of starting Deep Space Nine. When I get to season 6, I overlap, so I'll be actually watching for the first time maybe some pretty close. We might actually get to a point where we're almost sort of in the same space. I don't
On the
know.
same, yeah.
You might get ahead of me, or I might blow by you, depending on the pace. But it's
Yeah,
coming.
if you get to me, then I gotta get in gear. But
It-
yeah, that's gonna be fun. To kind of, for you to be able to hit that on your rewatch, and then me just hitting that, I think it's gonna make for some fun conversations, maybe
yeah,
topics.
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll have. There might be some episodes that we just both watched that we can kind of choose for episode spotlights and really dive into some of the interesting ones. So yeah, I think that'll do it. I think we should just jump right into our guess each other's. For those who haven't been here for one of these before, maybe this is the first one you're watching. This is a recurring topic for us. It's kind of our way to do like a top 5 list. You know, there are a lot of great podcasts out there that Trek Ranks is probably the most famous in our community of Star Trek fans here online, where you go, you share top 5 lists of this or that, and our way of kind of putting our own stamp on it is, instead of just us sharing our own, we try to guess each other's top 5s, and then we share our own. So it's a kind of a test to see how well we know each other, and how much our instincts about each other's fandom, basically. And it gives it an interesting spin, something different, as opposed to just rattling off our favorites, which is always fun, and we do that. We've done that ourselves, and other shows do it really well too.
Yeah.
So I'm going to switch over to a second screen here, which is going to give a little board that'll highlight as we go. I'm going to add each ship as we we'll do our guesses first, I think, and then we'll do our actuals to see how close we get with each other. And as we go, we'll talk about our choices and why we pick things, and why we put them where they are, favorite things about each one. And again, if anybody, I know AKA Mamel's in the room, and I know has a list. If anybody else is kind of hanging out there watching, or you pop in, please feel free to share your own choices, and we'll certainly highlight them and talk about what we see. Do you want to go over your guesses for me first, and I'll throw in one as you go, or do you want me to?
Sure, I can do my guesses for you.
Okay.
So we can.
What do you got?
I am gonna try to play some games here. I'm gonna try to throw you off. My actual list, has 4 Federation and 1 non-Federation.
Okay. All right.
So I'll try to throw that in there, because AKA Mamel said she picked 5 Federation ships, and I'm just curious.
Looking forward to seeing what you
got. My guesses for Bill would be the Defiant, the Deep Space Nine.
Okay.
The Discovery, from Discovery. NX-01 Enterprise, from Enterprise. The Enterprise D, of TNG. And TOS era Constitution class Enterprise.
Okay, let's see. Discovery 4. 3 was, what was 3?
NX-01.
NX-01.
From Enterprise.
Okay.
Number 2 was the Enterprise D.
Yep.
You got that?
Yeah. Yep. I'm just a little slow with the.
No, it's okay. Yeah, I didn't realize that. Yeah, you had to do some producer-y things during the.
And then the number 1 is the 1701 Classic, right?
Yes, the TOS era Constitution class Enterprise. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
I could
talk a little bit about what went into your guesses, basically. What any interesting thoughts?
I tried to stay, because just thinking about you, I just feel like you go with like the typical, like the classic,
the boring,
usually cited. Yeah, I didn't want to say that, but which is fine. But I think my biggest, what really, my toughest picks for you was the Discovery and was the Defiant. Okay. So I know how much you like Discovery, but I don't know if that cracked your top 5, because I was trying to remember the last time we did this, if we if you had that on your list. So I know I feel relatively comfortable with 1 and 2 at least being on your list, but I think 3, 4, and 5. That's where I could see maybe something else sneaking up there. That's probably my toughest 3 actually. Is 3 through 5. I think was tough to kind of get. Maybe Discovery doesn't even make it on there. Maybe the NX just barely missed it. Maybe Voyager sneaks up in there. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're correct in assuming that I tend to go fairly pat and fairly boring. I tend to go with the obvious choices, which kind of makes like the guess for what might make the 5 fairly easy. It's just I think it usually comes down to like the order that they're going to go in. But we'll see how close you got in a few minutes here. So I'm gonna go over what I have for you.
Okay.
I'm gonna guess that your 5th choice was the Discovery, which I don't feel confident in at all. That's a sort of kind of long shot, probably incorrect guess, but we'll see. For number 4, I have the 1701 Classic, which again I have faith. I'm almost positive it's on your list somewhere. It's just a matter of where. For number 3, I'm gonna put the 1701D from the Next Generation.
Okay.
Which again, I'm fairly confident will appear on the list. It's just a matter of where. This is the one that you didn't guess for me. That I'm not. Now I'm questioning. I'm not sure if you thought of it or if you where you would put it. I'm gonna call it the 1701 refit from the classic movies.
TOS movies.
Yep. And then I am going to have as your number 1 Voyager. That's my guess. Which I'm extraordinarily confident, again, will be in your list somewhere, probably in the top 2 or 3. It's just I'm taking a guess that it's possibly maybe your number 1. So, same with you. I mean, my lack of confidence with yours is I think you are more apt to go off the beaten path and maybe find something a little bit more unique. Maybe break a rule. Pick something that you might be able to twist into a hero ship, but my brain might not allow for it to be. Which I wish I could have figured out a way to throw one of those in there just to illustrate that. But I feel fairly confident that at least these 5 were in the conversation. Whether or not they actually made it or not is another story. But I'm very eager to hear what you have for your actuals. Because nothing would surprise me with your picks.
Okay.
I think, it's going to be interesting. But maybe before we go into our actuals, we haven't done this before. Do we want to share like how many of my 5 are on your list? Do you want to reveal that?
My guesses for you or my actual?
Your actual compared to my guesses. How many of the 5 that I put on my guest list for you are on your actual list?
Oh, okay.
Without revealing what they are.
3.
3.
There's 3. Yes.
Okay.
I with my picks, my actual picks, I try to stay out of different times, different timelines. Different. There is no refits or different iterations of the ship. I don't think. Besides, I guess in the long line of the Enterprise lineage. Besides that, so.
Okay.
I thought about going the kind of bending the rules a little bit, but I think with how this month is set up, it's gonna allow us to be able to at least cover a bunch of stuff. Let's say if we were just doing this was just a one-off, I would definitely try to sneak in and try to just mess with you a little bit, play some games. But with the coverage, I think it would be fun to just be really straightforward with it. So,
okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I'll tell you, you got 3 of my 5.
Okay.
So Hey, we're we're equal there. Both
Yeah.
got 3 of 5. So I guess I went first for no, you went first for your guesses for me. So I
Yeah.
guess I'll reveal my actuals at this
Okay.
point. Talk about why I went with each one, and then we'll do yours. For me, my number 5 is Voyager, uh, which
Hmm.
you didn't have on your guess for me.
Thought about this. Thought
I
about doing.
I love the Voyager. I think because I could have gone with a couple of different ships because it's fifth, um, but it's kind of so integral to that show that it's home. It's actual like it's
Yeah. For sure.
genuinely
Yeah.
I feel like it's more central to like that show's identity, uh, being the thing that holds these people together. That I just it felt wrong to not have it on the list, and it is comfortable. Like it's one of those successful Star Trek things that like especially when you're rewatching it and you're like deep into the show, you feel like you know every nook and cranny on the ship. You feel like you could
Yeah.
if you got plopped down in the middle of the corridor, you could kind of navigate
Yeah.
it and know where you're at. So had to make the list. I went
Yeah.
with my number 4, one that you did get right, is the NX-01,
Okay.
which I think successfully accomplished kind of hitting the reset button a little bit with how these ships are designed while being retro but still being futuristically cool. Uh, and it also had the something Voyager didn't have to do, which was kind of reimagine everything, the way touchscreens were going to look, the way the consoles were going to work. Like it couldn't use LCARs.
Yeah.
Everything about the interior of the ship had to be kind of wiped clean.
It feels right at home in the show.
It
For sure.
does, yeah. And again, it just like Voyager, and I think all these ships, for the most part, with maybe one exception, just for lack of time. Uh, I feel like if you drop me in there, I could walk around because it feels like home. I think that fits for all of them. Voyager, it's so integral to the show, but
Yeah.
I think the NX-01, it feels homey and comfortable, but appropriately retro, but not corny retro, if that makes sense. Like they had that impossible task of having to be 100 years before TOS, which Discovery kind of had to
Yeah.
reckon with too, and still be cool and interesting and exciting as a thing that's 100 years in our future, but not universe breaking in its look because it's pre what the 1960s were able to do. And I think the show
Hmm.
and the production designers did a nice job on the exterior and on the interior of the ship,
Yeah.
accomplishing that um, as well as it could be. My number 3, I'm going to go with the 1701 refit, which is the one that, just for lack of time, like that's the one where I'd say, if you dropped me in a corridor, maybe I wouldn't know exactly where I was, just because it's in four and a half, 5.5 movies, I guess. It barely
Yeah.
5 and change. You can see it at the very end of 4.
Yeah.
But from an exterior standpoint, I think arguably it might be the sheer sexiest, just most perfectly designed. Just there are shots in the motion picture during that, incredibly long shuttle pod approach with Kirk and Scotty. Just angles of the ship. I'm thinking of like from the rear, looking up at it, that are just like so iconically like things that captured my imagination as a young kid that I think were like integral to me falling in love with this thing. Just like the awe-inspiring like look at this thing. It's huge. That especially the motion picture that I think genuinely is a big reason why I kind of fell in love with Star Trek as a whole. Number 2, 1701 classic. So I did exactly what you said you weren't going to do, and went with different versions of the same ship,
Yeah.
pre-refit. I think the design of the original Enterprise is an unbelievable achievement. If you look at science fiction from the 1950s and early
Breaks the
60s,
mold.
it does. It's
Yeah.
not a flying saucer. It's not a simple
Yeah, it's not a
rocket
dish.
ship.
It's not a dinner plate. Yeah, it's
Right.
not a rocket ship. It just breaks the mold.
It's this gorgeous, you know, innovative design that makes sense. It's even though it doesn't need to be aerodynamic in space, and it doesn't work that way, but it looks like it is. It looks like it can move.
Yeah.
It looks like it's
Yeah.
maneuverable.
Yeah.
And you just can't underestimate if you go back and you look at contemporaneous science fiction from that time, look at how radical a departure it is and how it stood the test of time. It's an amazing achievement, and it still captures people's imagination, including myself. So, and then my number one, the ship I essentially grew up on, and is my definite choice is the 1701D, the Next Generation. Enterprise is my home away from home. If I dream about Star Trek, I'm walking around the Enterprise D. Like that's which I don't say I do. I'm not saying I do all the time, but on the rare occasion that might happen, that's probably where I'm walking around. That's Star Trek to me in a nutshell. And maybe it's because I'm rewatching it now and I'm kind of forcing myself to think, okay, which one of these shows is my actual favorite, which has always been my least favorite thing to confront and have to put a flag down on to choose, which of these shows is my genuine actual favorite. I love them all so much, and I really do try to almost think of Star Trek as a whole as one show with different kind of chapters along the way. But the more I think back to how I've always looked at Star Trek and how I grew up with it and how I feel when I'm watching it, it's probably the Next Generation. And because of that, the Enterprise D feels the most cozy, homey, where I'd want to live if I could squeeze myself into the TV and live my life in some imaginary universe. That's where I'd choose to live.
Yeah.
So cool. you nailed my 1, 2, and 4. Not necessarily in the correct spots, but you got 3 out of my 5 right. And that's the fun of this. So, any thoughts on anything surprising to you about what I said, or anything you figured was coming?
It definitely makes sense. So, it definitely fits what I thought. I just had a few kind of missteps. I think it tinkered too much as well.
That happens. That definitely happens with these.
Because I thought about putting Voyager on there, but I was like, maybe Defiant. But
the Defiant, I love the Defiant. It pained me not to throw it on there. But I think the tiebreaker is what I said about Star Trek Voyager being, that ship is core to that show. Existing. That is the show. The only thing that is holding these ragtag group of people together is this place that they're forced to live, and it does. I feel like it becomes a character on that show. Where I love the Defiant. It's. I love how different it is. I love how cramped and uncomfortable it is, and it's like this bare essentials. I love the simplicity of the crew quarters, just having these bunk beds and no real space, just a little replicator, maybe a chair, some beds. It's like a basic hotel room, and that's it. No luxury, no nothing. I love the lean meanness of it, but at the end of the day, when I think of Deep Space Nine, I think of Deep Space Nine. I don't necessarily. The thing that pops into my mind immediately isn't the Defiant.
The Defiant.
It's when I think of Voyager, I think of that bridge and those corridors and the mess hall and that engineering set and sick bay. Those sets are they loom so large with that show. Where with Deep Space Nine, I think of the Promenade and Sisko's office and Quark's bar and Ops. Maybe before I think of the Defiant Bridge.
Mm-hmm.
So,
cool.
What about your list?
My list. 2 things you should probably know and probably remember. I like when we break the mold. So all my ships kind of, in a way, break the mold to what we've seen. So, and then I also said that one of my ships was non-Federation.
Okay.
And I had 4 Federation ships. So, I will start with my number 5.
What do you got?
But, on the graphic, those picks need to be moved over, I think, because they're in my actual.
Oh yeah, they do. You're right. My bad.
Yeah.
It's
So
happening as
my
we
number.
speak.
Okay, cool. Like I said, my list is breaking the mold, either from what we've seen before or what we've seen in science fiction. So, I guess I'll just kind of finish the. You guys are probably wondering which non-Federation ship is in my list, which is my number 5.
Okay.
So my number 5 is the NX-01,
It is
which
not a Federation ship.
technically is not a Federation ship because the Federation ship has not been established yet. So technically, it is not a
Correct.
Federation ship. So,
No.
but you got to remember, the ship does break the mold of the Enterprise we've seen. It does a perfect job of, like, it does have the two nacelles and the elongated, kind of the elongated nacelles. It does have the saucer, but it doesn't have the engineering section like we've seen before. So I think it's a perfect kind of progression, but it also feels right at home in the show. So my number 4 is the Defiant from Deep Space Nine.
Okay.
This ship, probably more than any of these ships, I think has definitely grown on me. I think when it first got delivered, I was like, yeah, I don't know, but I slowly grew to love this ship so much. I think it's perfect. It's bare bones, the essentials, which I really love, and it kind of fits the theme of that show. So, and it definitely breaks the mold. There's no really nacelle type. This is really cool.
It's lean and mean. It doesn't have
exactly.
It's built compactly, I think, to not take on like what happens in Beyond with those nacelles. Like these ships come along and literally rip them off and leave the ship like broken in half. You can't do that to the Defiant. It's more I like the design of it that allows for it to be. I think it makes sense as a warship because it's so compact.
Yeah,
it's not. Go ahead.
Yeah, my number 3 is, again, got to think about it. We're breaking the mold. This is actually technically an Enterprise, I guess. Obviously, it is the D. I think when we look back at, there's so many iterations of kind of the classic Constitution class. Those are nice progressions, from TOS and into the movies, but also with we didn't really talk about this, but with the Kelvin timeline too. I didn't want to pick. I picked one of those, kind of the grandfather of them all, but I wanted to pick the D because it does break the mold, and you got to think about, especially when picking a ship, you got to think about the outside and the inside. Yes, the outside. Maybe some people don't like it as much. It has definitely grown on me as definitely top 5 ship, obviously top 3 ship. But the inside, I really love. It feels perfectly of that show. It feels luxurious. It feels it's just all around great show, inside and out. So
sure.
My number 2. The grandfather of them all, the Constitution class in TOS. That ship is so iconic. Again, we're breaking the mold kind of in a different way. We're breaking it from science fiction of the time in the 60s. The 60s were so 60s, right? Bill said it. It was either a rocket or a dinner plate, 2 dinner plates put together. It's such a timeless design that I think, 50 some odd years later, I still lust after that show or after that ship. So
for sure,
it's a great design, and I really, really, really like it. My number 1, you guys are looking at the list and saying, "Damn, where's Voyager?" Well, Voyager's my number 1. I mean, I love this. Again, we're breaking the mold. We do have some classic Federation, we got the nacelles, we got the saucer, but it feels like a really natural progression inside that Federation um, ship design and ship styles. It's so cool to see some movement, how the cells move.
Yeah, AKA Mabel mentioned that. Good point.
To kind of fix that warp theory, warp field thing. Again, this Bill said it too. The ship is really a part of that show, in that I think it does feel right at home. It does feel fast. It does feel really really great inside and out. I really do like the bridge and the other sets, main engineering. Whether it is, even if it is just a redressing of other places, I do like that change. All good stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A thing about Voyager that always it almost makes me want to retroactively like move it up the list. A contrast between the Voyager and Enterprise D is you can't shake the feeling watching the Next Generation, because of the size of the Enterprise D, that there are places on that ship that we never see, because it's obviously enormous. There's facilities in there that are countless. And the ship in the show has its standing sets, obviously, and we spend a lot of time on the bridge and in the crew quarters and engineering sickbay, 10 forward, places like that. But you get the sense that there are these science labs and places that we just don't get the opportunity to see in the show. Voyager, because it's a smaller ship with a smaller crew, it's a little bit more lean and mean. That's the ship that I feel like we lived there. Like, we saw every corner of it, from the bridge down to the bottom deck in Good Shepherd. Like, everything in between. I don't feel like there was...
Feels lived in.
It feels lived in, and it feels like there weren't places that we never got to go. It feels like we saw the people's quarters, and there's a science lab that we spent some time with later in the show. We get the astrometrics lab in the later seasons, and the cargo bays and the shuttle bay, and it just feels like a lot of time was spent fleshing out the different areas of the ship, and that makes it, I think also lends itself to making that ship feel uniquely homey. I really feel like we saw everything there was to see, which is kind of unique to that show. Enterprise 2, the NX-01, same deal, because it's a small ship, not a lot of people on it, and it's also kind of bare essentials in a lot of ways compared to something like the Enterprise D, or even the Enterprise from TOS, which both feel like big ships with a lot going on in them. But Voyager in particular, I think, was successful at really making that ship feel lived in. I think that's what you said, and is as well said as you can say it.
I really like, especially with Voyager, I think that the temptation with that ship would probably be, especially if it's a long-term, deep space science exploration ship, it was like, I feel like the temptation was there to make it bigger and badder than the D. And I'm really glad that they didn't. I'm glad that they went a different direction. I'm glad that they just really took the time to develop a different ship that again, like you said, scale it back to something that I think definitely fits for, when we think about it, I think that essential things in the ship would lend itself better to a long-term deep space instead of this big, not to knock the D at all, but it is definitely cited as a generational ship where there's families, businesses, and things like that. I really think that this is Voyager is such a purpose-built ship that I think is just fantastic. So.
Yeah, I think we both put a lot of emphasis on like shaking up the mold and doing new things, and like the something like the NX-01, I talked about it needing to kind of go back to ground zero and remove itself and do different things from what those 21st century shows did. But I think Voyager, you can make a case, maybe had the even tougher task, that it had to echo and feel like it's coming from the same time as the Enterprise D, like built along the same sort of assembly line, by the same
Hmm.
group of engineers, kind of put these ships together and design them. But it's different. Like it's got its own personality, but it has to feel of a piece with something contemporaneously like the Enterprise D. Like they're just separated
Yeah.
by a few years, not a century or two
Hmm.
centuries. So I think there's
Yeah.
a challenge to that, to give Voyager its own unique personality and not just repeat yourself, but not to go too far to make it feel like it's a completely different entity. And I
Yeah.
think they were successful with that. There's enough connective tissue between the Enterprise D and the other ships that we see in the Next Generation and
Yeah.
Voyager, so that they do feel like they come from the same place and come from the same basic design principles, but that the color schemes of the corridors are a little different. The you
Yeah.
know the little subtle things that they do to give it its own personality while still not pushing too far
Yeah.
had to be a challenge, and they were undeniably successful because it feels like a Starfleet ship from the 24th
Yeah.
century that you feel like you could transfer from the Enterprise D to Voyager or vice versa, and
Yeah.
feel like you're in a place that you know how to work in, if that's
Yeah.
your trade, if that's your job. Um,
Yeah.
so I appreciate that a lot about Voyager. It's a unique task that ship and that show had to reckon with.
Yeah.
Unlike it's easy to kind of throw Enterprise's way, like, oh man, that's such a challenge to have to go back in time and kind of reshape everything and think outside the
Yeah.
box. Like, but I guess there's probably something liberating about that too, that it made
Yeah.
it easier than what Voyager had to do. So they both have unique challenges in their own ways, as far as redoing it.
Yeah.
So, one thing that I noticed about all of these lists, other than Discovery, which you guessed for me, and I guessed for you, we both guessed Discovery for each other. It didn't make either list. And really nothing in either of our lists, actual lists, came from New Era Star Trek. It's all the classic old stuff. No Discovery, no
Yeah.
La Sirena from Picard, no Cerritos. Um, which of those ships were you closest to putting on your list? Did you give serious consideration to any of them, or were they all pretty
They were
clearly
all
off?
um, pretty, pretty solid. I think there was no um, tough cuts, at least from New Era stuff. I think there were some tough cuts from, you know, uh, maybe the Golden Age. But
Hmm.
the thing with Discovery, and I had a point that I wanted to kind of make with Voyager, but I'll kind of tie it to Discovery.
Sure, no,
Is
go ahead. Yeah,
um,
anything.
one more thing about Voyager. I promise it'll tie to Discovery. Voyager to me feels so sorry to keep spending so much time on Voyager.
Yeah,
I
hey.
love the show, ship, both so much. Voyager felt specialized.
Hmm.
The not to knock the D at all, but we got the Challenger, the Victory, a bunch of other iterations of that, and it felt not as specialized as Voyager was, and I really like that about Voyager, and I think that's similar to this Discovery. It feels so specialized. The design is so unique
Yeah.
of that time. If we're thinking about kind of in that area, it does feel specialized, and I really like that about the Discovery's design. It is very unique, and it feels specialized, and it feels maybe a little bit futuristic of the time. So I think, yeah, I'm not knocking Discovery at all, but I wanted to also make that point about Voyager feeling specialized as well.
It does, and
When you
you're
think about the how the D was not
all purpose.
all purpose, but it felt a little bit like it was made more. Like I feel like with Voyager, I think I just liked it. It was special. Sorry.
Yeah, no, you're right. It's built with a clear mission at hand. It's a long term scientific research vessel. Discovery is clearly built as a prototype to allow for this experimental propulsion technology. Like that's kind of what its purpose is. It's lean and mean too. It's kind of scaled back in terms of size. It's built for a specific purpose with a single sort of idea in mind. Where the Enterprise D clearly it's the flagship. I mean, it's designed to be the Galaxy class ship is designed to be like the front of the line, most impressive, flagship kind of ship.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's built to, I think, kind of do it all. which does give something like Voyager maybe a little more of a distinctive personality. Um,
What,
so
yeah, which I think goes back to maybe the class kind of system, not like middle class,
sure,
lower class, upper class. I meant like the Intrepid class, or some classes like that, or have I think fewer ships, but are more specialized. Whereas the D um, feels different in that way. So
yeah. A.K. Mamel says about the Discovery starting to warm to the Discovery, but the short-lived Shenzhou just looked more cool. And I think the Shenzhou is like one of those perfect examples of if you wanted to stretch by our definition, it's kind of a hero ship because it's for those 2 episodes.
I think it is. The heroes lived on it.
The heroes lived on it at the beginning of the show. Yeah. That's where that's for more than one episode even. That's where our characters are operating from. So you certainly could pick that. And I do love the Shenzhou, and I love the Discovery too. I agree, it's growing on me a lot. I think over each season, we've been spending a little more time on the ship, seeing the sets kind of get refined and shot differently over the course of multiple seasons, multiple episodes. I think that's a big part of kind of making the ships feel lived in and homey. And I think we're getting there with Discovery now in the 3rd season, into 30-some episodes. It's starting to feel a little more familiar in like the engineering test bay and in sick bay. Like I feel comfortable there when we're in scenes in these different places. It's definitely getting there for me. I'm trying to think. Anything else that came? Mamel. Enterprise D was her number 1, like a city in space. Really deviated from the classic Enterprise look, and the fact that you could split up the ship and like separating the Enterprise D is another interesting. Cool That's a cool feature that wasn't used very often, but when they did, it always felt cool. One of my favorite things in Encounter Farpoint is that sequence. It's kind of them flexing, saying, "Look what we can do," and it's just neat. Voyager made her list too. Movable nacelles, pointed that out. Not a huge fan of the Defiant. She mentions the Enterprise E. Did you give? I know you mentioned that you kind of stayed away from like the Enterprise E kind of fits because it's not a refit of a ship the way like the classic Enterprise in the 1701
and that was
refit
probably a tough cut too because I really like the futuristic long.
Yeah,
it looks fast. Like when it. The movement of it is really cool.
Yeah,
I think it's a Sovereign class.
Yeah,
it's really cool. I like that. That was a tough cut. I think probably. If we're talking iterations go, I feel like we could do top 5 iterations of the ship.
Yes, that would be you could
too because I think similar to the Sovereign class, some of the stuff in the Kelvin timeline stuff.
Yeah.
There's some minor changes, so that to me was a tough call. So, but I think with the Sovereign class and what the E did is a kind of breaking the mold to what we've seen in the D. So,
yeah, agreed. What was your toughest cut? What was your number 6?
Number 6 was probably. I think that I try to stay away from. So I'd probably say the refit, just because, again, I was trying to stay away from iterations more or less. Like I feel like I had to put the D in the classic, which I guess, and the next one is technically an iteration of the Enterprise. But I really love the refit. I think again, such a timeless design. It just looks good. I think that was probably my toughest cut as a refit. Okay,
cool. My toughest cut was probably the Discovery, the thing I was closest to like edging onto the list.
Yeah.
If I'm being honest,
makes you feel better a little bit about
my
guesses.
Yeah, for sure. There you go. The Defiance there too, but again, I think Discovery being a little bit more core to that show. That's the thing that has me hesitating to pick the Defiant. It feels less
identity.
I feel less. Yeah, when I think of that show, it's not necessarily the thing that pops most to mind. Although there are episodes from Deep Space Nine that really are high on my list of favorites that do feature the Defiant heavily. I think of an episode like Children of Time, which you haven't come anywhere near yet. It's later season 5 that I think is almost entirely set on the Defiant. A lot of planet side stuff too, but they're on the Defiant that week, and there are other episodes like that. That there certainly are episodes of Deep Space Nine that are really good. That they're essentially on. It's like a more traditional Star Trek episode because they're on a ship, and not just hanging out at the station. But Discovery, especially as we're moving forward and we're into the 3rd season now, I think the ship is starting to feel more like a character. I get that kind of bubbly feeling when I see the ship, the way that I remember growing up seeing Voyager and the Enterprise D.
Yeah.
Like, it was like, yes, this is Star Trek. I love it. The Discovery is certainly getting there. So I think my number 6 would be that. But I like all these. I like Cerritos. That ship grew on me a lot as that show went on.
Yeah, it did.
I mean, it's short. It's only 10 episodes and 20 minutes each. But I like that design. I think that they did a nice job doing a lot of the things we talked about with like Voyager, having to do something a little different. Feels right at home in the 24th century next to the Enterprise D and Voyager. But it has its own personality and it's got its own features that are unique to it. Didn't it broke the mold in some ways, but didn't in others. It found that kind of balance. And
there's some foundational stuff that you can see. Yeah.
So, a lot of tough decisions on this, and it's one of those that I think I say this every time we do against each other's, but this is still true here. I think if we packed this away and tried to do this again in a couple of weeks and didn't think about what we did here, the list would probably look a little different. I can't promise that my list
change,
would.
Yeah. This is whatever date and whatever time.
As of November 8th.
Yeah.
This is what it is today, and where we are on our current rewatches. When I might talk about the Defiant differently when I'm in the middle of 5th season Deep Space Nine. Maybe it edges onto the list. But one thing that talking about this definitely I think drives home is how much these ships, the interiors, the exteriors, everything about them are core to the identity of each of these shows. I think they really do They are great characters in these shows, and they do contribute to the just the feel. I mean, they feel as impactful and as important as some of the characters do. And thinking about it through this lens drives that home for me.
I think that's what makes them technically, quote unquote, a hero ship, is when they feel like that.
Correct.
So when we move on to, recurring or one-offs, I think that it's tough to put these in there because, like you said, it's part of the core identity of the show.
Right. No, I totally agree. I think these next couple of weeks definitely will present different challenges and will be more difficult. Like I can promise you, I won't get 3 out of 5.
It's gonna get harder,
or especially the week after. I think I'm actually really looking forward to the one-off ships just because that's such a
gonna be. I feel like if I'm gonna be a victory to me is getting one. of the one-offs. Yeah.
Yeah, it's gonna be. I'm really looking forward to thinking about it and trying to come up with what I'm gonna guess, and I'm extremely confident that I'll be lucky to get 1 or 2 for sure. Yeah. And even next week with the recurring ships, because of the ambiguity of it and what you could kind of call. We're not going to spend a whole lot of time defining this is exactly what it has to be. It has to fit in this box. I think it's even more fun for it to just kind of think about it the way you're going to think about it and just bring out whatever you're going to bring out and let it be what it's going to be. My window's open and it feels like an airplane is taking off right next to me. So if you hear that, I apologize.
It's a ship
something.
taking off.
There's a ship taking off. The Enterprise is right next door. I think that's going to do it for this week. What do you have any content you want to throw out there as a shout out for this week? Listen to anything?
No, I don't think so. I think maybe I'll throw out though I think we did a top 5 ships episode at least a long time ago, so maybe we'll check that out. On Trek Live. And maybe just shout out Core Setting next week. Yeah, we have Core Setting next week to talk about Die Trying, which is episode 5 of Discovery's 3rd season, Saturdays at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. The other thing I'll throw out there, if you want to hear what I thought probably, maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago, if you go over to Trek Ranks and find episode 50 and 51,
He did, and I was a guest on these episodes. It was
top 5 ships.
top 5 ships and top 5 relationships
Yeah.
and ships. So
Yeah.
I gave I did this sort of thing with Jim over at Trek Ranks quite a while ago, but I'm almost positive that list looks different than this list. I didn't go back and listen to it. I don't remember what I said, but
to fact check you.
maybe I'll be amazed if it's the exact same ranking. Truly amazed. I almost guarantee it's not, but you can. I would recommend maybe going over and checking that out. Trek Ranks as a whole, but episode 50 specifically on the top 5 ships conversation. Okay.
Cool.
All right, that'll do it. We're coming in just under an hour, which is where we like to be. We'll be back next week with more ship talk for Trek Live, Sunday at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. Course heading, as I said, Saturday morning, 10 a.m. Eastern Time, talking about the latest in Star Trek Discovery. And if you're interested in joining our Discord server for Trek Live, where we share what we're watching, talk about episodes, we have a room dedicated to new Star Trek talk. We have a room dedicated to Star Trek literature. If you're reading a book and you want to share some thoughts, Star Trek book, you can do it there. It'll connect you with friendly, nice Star Trek fans who are not negative, who are embracing of liking any and all Star Trek, new stuff, old
Different
stuff, whatever.
opinions,
Different.
yes.
It's not a shout you down, not an angry group, not a divisive environment at all. It's not overly huge. It's small and intimate, but it's active, and it'll give you an opportunity to meet some like-minded, very friendly people. You can send me a DM on Twitter at TrekFan4387, and I'll get you an invitation to join the conversation there. And yeah, I hope you'll consider that if you're a Discord user or you're interested in learning about it.
Yeah.
All right.
Cool.
Thanks to AKA Mamel, who was hanging around in the chat. Thanks to anybody else who I saw other people kind of coming and going in the Periscope feed. Anybody who watched this live, we appreciate you. If you watch it on YouTube later this week, it'll post on YouTube in about 48 hours, usually on Tuesday it goes up. We appreciate that too. But appreciate anybody who takes any time to watch us, listen to us.
You guys make the show.
Absolutely. All right. See you next week.
Yep. Thanks for watching, everyone.